For more on the future of labor unions on a changing U.S. economy, I'm joined by author Philip Dine. He's the author of State of the Unions. You can see the book there on the screen, How Labor Can Strengthen the Middle Class and Improve Our Economy and Regain Political Influence. Welcome back. It's good to see you. I've got a copy of the book here. And Jessica was talking about this story of the plant who voted very close. They could have gone union. They could have not gone union. How big of a deal was that in the bigger picture of things, whether they voted yes or no?
Well, it would have been a big deal had they succeeded, because it would have been the first foreign transplant in the South, in the auto industry, to organize. And that's important because, as was mentioned in your lead-in, UAW has lost 75% of its membership because of the problems of the big three in Detroit. And increasingly, foreign automakers are moving to the South, setting up plants in the southern U.S. because cheaper labor force and often right-to-work states. So there's a very small union movement in the South, and they like that. So this would have sent a signal to the rest of the South, and maybe unions are on the way. Here's the thing,
a little background for our guests. Of the entire country in the private sector, 7% of those working are actually in unions. That means 93% are not in unions. Now that number goes up when you include, as you mentioned earlier, the public sector. That could be 11, 12%. Nonetheless, that number has declined dramatically over the past few decades. What happened?
Well, it was, as you point out, it was about 37% in the mid-50s, so it's about a third of what it was overall. What's happened is, I'd say 3 or 4 things. One is globalization. You know, the economy has changed. Manufacturing jobs, which are disproportionately union, have moved overseas or to southern states, right-to-work states. There's been, ever since Ronald Reagan broke the air traffic controllers union in the early 80s, there had been a gradual decline in labor because of what I just said, globalization. That gradual decline became precipitous after '81 because employers got the message that they could get much tougher with unions.
I'm going to speculate here, so bear with me. There are a lot more lawyers in America. Companies are on Facebook and Twitter, so if they treat an employee badly or unfairly, they have different avenues to go to besides going to a union representative. Do those options, or the number of options available now to workers, does that perhaps reduce the need for unions?
Not in the least. Workers don't really have many options. I mean, what's happened is not, in my view, not that there are more options, but that the economy has changed. I mean, unions were built around collective gatherings of workers, be they mines, be they construction sites, be they huge plants, auto or other, steel plants, where there are a lot of workers together. They have the same plight, the same grievances, and they're easy to organize because they're all in one place. Now you have scattered, and plus people stayed in jobs for a long time. Now you have people changing jobs all the time. They're independent contractors. They work at home. They freelance. They're in the fast food industry. There's a few in one place. There's a lot of factors that make it harder to organize. But the need for the unions is stronger than ever, not less than ever, because of the growing income inequality.
Let me give you an example. Over in Seattle, Boeing, they used to be headquartered there. They now have their factories to build the 777s and all these major aircraft. There was a recent vote that they basically said, agree to these new terms regarding their pensions, or we're going to move the factories to another location. Do you think that's fair that the unions have to basically vote whether they keep their jobs or not in a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I think management and unions bring whatever weapons they can to the fight. And sure, I mean, the owners own the plant, the company owns the plant. They can, well, what they cannot do, it is illegal to say you can't say if you form a union, we'll move. But you can say, when you're negotiating contract, if you're the company, that, you know, we can't afford certain things, and if you force us, we'll move elsewhere.
I'm going to quote a friend of mine who's running for Congress. He says that unions gave us the weekend. Is that true?
That's absolutely true.
What will the unions give us in the next decade?
Well, it's an interesting point, because people act as if everything the unions have won is set in stone. We have rising safety problems. We don't have child labor. We don't have things like that. That's true. But we have people getting poorer. We have what's distinguished America.
But wouldn't you agree companies are more responsible today than they were in the 50s or 60s? We've come a long ways as a corporation, America, that is.
I'd say we've come a long way since the 20s and 30s, since 100 years ago. We have better safety in the mines and so on. I think we've gone backwards since the 50s and 60s and 70s. That was a period when we had a growing middle class, when a boss might make 80 times what a typical employee. Now the typical CEO makes more money before lunch on the first day of the year than his average employee will make for the year.
I'm going to assume you've convinced me that this is a good idea, but for the viewers that are watching, if they're in a situation where they have to vote whether to be in a union or not, what does union leadership have to do to connect and convince them to say yes?
You just put your finger on the question. Unions have not done a good job communicating with the public and with employees why a strong labor movement is not only in the interests of average worker, but in the interests of the country. And that's because we need a strong middle class in this country if we're going to remain the United States.
Philip Dine, State of the Unions, thank you very much. Good to have you on again.